Hello folks, old Buster coming to you again. Now this little story here is about a fella that's sure enough true. His name is C.L.R. Daughtry. D-O-U-G-H-T-E-R-Y. Daughtry. Or Daughtry, however you want to say it. But his friends all call him Bud. And I met Bud through some of the books he's written. I've read most of his books. The Blue Water series and other series. And there's some things in there he didn't know what people put in his book, and he had it changed. He's quite a good feller too. And I was thinking about old Bud, so I wrote this story about him. Bud. Well, boys, y'all going ahead and get your business done over at the county and at the bank. I'm going to take Isaac to the Amtrak station up in Little Rock, and then I got to stop over to the VA for a spell and get some pills. Isaac met up with his cousin to go on a little vacation for 10 days, and then I began to leave on out. About the time I was about to leave, I see the feller just all perplexed and fractious and just plumb ditherated. I stopped and asked him if he was having trouble, and he said just a mite. He done lost all of his impossibles and didn't even have the time of day. Well, the feller told me his name was Bud Daughtry, and I introduced myself to him as well. I told him I reckon I could help him on out some if he'd allow that now. Well, he said, well, sure enough, but he would have to pay me back for any money I spent. Well, I told old Bud we'd cross that bridge when we got there, and not to worry none about all that right now. Bud, you hungry? I asked him. A mite, he said. I'm about to cave in, to tell the truth. Well, I got a place where you can fill up real well here. Well, when I say real well, they got everything to eat, more than you'd ever think about, but the name of it's Sally's Home Kitchen if you like country food, or Sim's Barbecue if you like that. Well, Bud said, I'd like to try your barbecue. Well, consider it done, and we took on out. I asked Bud if he was in a hurry to leave town, but he said he wasn't, because he was on a cross-country tour for a book he was writing. Well, you's going to be well fed, and we'll meet my folks and the boys. The boys, he said? Yep. We all, the four of us, have been raised together and in business and marryings and buryings, and have quite a few tales, which lots of them is true for sure, that we can help let you get in on, and we'll tell you all about it. Now, if you want to write something about it, you can. If you don't, you don't. I'm just telling you, we're going to tell you the truth, and we ain't going to do no lying. It'll be some of them make your hair stand up, but that's just pretty near how it is. Now, let's get to eating. Buster hollered, Mr. Sims, it's been a coon age since you been in. You want your usual? Yes, sir, but double it. This here fella with me is near about hungry as a junkyard dog. Well, Bud and Buster sit on down there, and their drinks was brung to them. Sweet iced tea for sure. Then the victuals was brung to their table. Bud looked at Buster with his eyes as big as dinner plates and asked who all this food for. Us, exclaimed Buster, so eat your fill. There was a rack of ribs for each of them, along with a pulled pork sandwich, tater salad, baked beans, corn on the cob, French fries, and a sweet cornbread muffin topped it off. Then dessert was laid before them. A dozen fried peach pies each and 2 sweet tater pies to boot. Can you eat all that, Buster queried Bud. Well, sure enough, but you need to make a dent in it at least yourself. Well, I'll finish off what you don't want, though. Can't let good food go to waste, you know. Well, after Buster and Bud left on out from Sims, Buster said he had to make a stop or two before heading on out to the house. Buster allowed that was just fine, because he was just along for the ride. Buster pulled up to the Capitol and told Bud to follow him on in. Well, Buster led Bud to the governor's office and told the gal at the desk to tell the governor he was there to see if he had a minute or two for him. Well, when the gal told the governor that Buster was there, he come out front just lickety-split. Buster said, howdy, Asa. I want you to meet a fine feller from Florida. This here is Bud Daughtry, and he is a-visiting me and the boys and our folks. Reckon I could get him one of them Arkansas traveler's certificate? Well, sure enough, Buster. I'll have Susie get one ready and sign it right now. Well, Asa asked Bud how he liked Arkansas, and Bud said they was some fine folks here, and it was a beautiful state. I plan to come back soon and finish my book here. I am plumb took with the place. Well, Asa told Buster to let him know when Bud was a-coming back, and he wanted Buster and the boys and their folks and Bud to come to supper over to the mansion. Sure will, Asa, and thank you for the certificate. Well, Bud put out his hand to Asa and said it was an honor, Governor, to meet you and visit your state. We're proud you come, Bud, so don't be a stranger now. I gotta run, boys. Some of them dang legislators gotta be in their bonnet about something or another, and then he left on out like his tail was on fire. Well, Buster stopped at the VA and got his and pills, and then him and Bud headed on to the house. The boys was back by then and met up with Buster and at his and Grandma Clara's house. She said it would be a bit before supper, so head on out and visit with the boys some. Well, with the guests in the house, Grandma Clara called up all the boys' folks for supper and asked them all to come on over. Well, all the women folk agreed to about 6:30 so as to allow enough time for the men folk to clean up. They all said they would bring something to eat as well. Now, Buster introduced Bud to the boys. There's Howard. He could fly or drive anything, as you well know. There's the captain, Jesse. He's the money man for the boys. And Walter, the trickster, as smart as a whip and could fix near about anything. Now, Howard wouldn't let that go, I tell you. He tells Bud, now, Buster's a right smart feller himself, but he's the stout one of the bunch, and you just can't fill up that holler leg of his'n. He also writes stories like you do, Bud. We all got some time, so let's go take a ride. They all went to their airport and went and got in the Queen. Well, Howard flew Bud all around the boys' places and around the surrounding towns and a few sights for Bud to see. After the sightseeing, it was near about supper time, so all of them headed on back to the house. Now, when the boys and Bud got to the house, all the folks of the boys was there, as well as any brother or sister that was around. What a table was set. Now, folks, I ain't going to tell you everything that was set on that table. It'd take me a month of Sunday to do that. But it was a lot. Old Bud was plumb bug-eyed. He told Buster, you don't mean we got to eat all that, do we? Yep, clean your plate or there'll be sure enough some fired up women folk ready to scunt your head. The meal was fit for a king, exclaimed Bud to Grandma Clara and the ladies. Best I ever had, and I surely do mean that, he said. Reckon your ma would agree to that, said all the women folk. I surely do believe that, said Bud. She ain't never knowed how to cook this kind of food. She would be plumb tickled pink to sit at this table with you ladies. Well, after supper, the boys and the men folks was a filling old Bud in about some of their exploits. But the one story about them lizards and the Presidential Corps sure enough got Bud's attention. You reckon I might get to meet some of them Presidential Corps folks sometime, asked Bud. Well, we can see, said Buster. I'll let you know. The boys went into town to Soup's Pool Hall for a game of snooker and at Leake's drugstore for a banana split, and even said howdy to Mr. Fisher at his cafe, and Tinker Dill tended to his garden that evening. The boys all knowed he growed as much as he could for his cafe. There was always something good to eat there, and it was what they called organic. There was a little soiree down by the church with dancing lessons going on as they passed on by. So all the boys dropped in, and the gals and other women folk just took a shine to old Bud, I tell you, when he started a-dancing with all of them. Heck, fire, you could be a teacher, one of them Adams gals declared. Every darn one of them females wouldn't have it any other way if they didn't get a dance with old Bud. Boy, oh boy. Boy, old Bud could cut a rug, I tell you. Walter asked Bud if he'd ever seen any crawdads before, and Bud said no. Well, reckon you're going to learn ain't now, said Buster. Walter told them all that they would start in the morning cutting some steers of theirs for calf fries for the next evening for the cookout in his place. After they was done at the Ollinger place, the boys would head on out to Grandpa Gus's farm for seining crawdads out of the canal along the Indian Bayou, and then do a little frog gigging on the farm as well. Ought to be a humdinger of a cookout, says Howard. Sure enough, says Walter, and by the way, Bud, my sisters sure do want a dance and want to visit a spell with you. Well, I ain't married yet nor engaged, so I reckon I won't be breaking any hearts, smiled Bud. Better watch out, said Jessie. My pheromones just might be a-getting to you and the gals. You ain't seed Walter's sisters, said Jessie. Your eyes will roll back like winter shades. But know this, both Dubs and Little Dubs and the brothers Melvin and Ike will see to it about any shenanigans. Well, I was raised right, said Bud, so don't worry none about me. Well, it ain't you he's worried about, Bud. It's them girls. We all know they got a mind of their own. Well, the next day after all the cutting and singing, there was quite an evening after the preacher left out after his'n visit. Jessie got out his'n fiddle and put on a show for us all. Well, just before bedtime, Mr. Hiram Holmes and Dalton and Devane come in. Everybody said their greetings with Grandpa Gus and Grandma Clara and the rest of the folks. Then all of them sat down in the parlor with the little old McBrayer, and Mr. Holmes said he understood that Bud wanted to visit with him for a spell. Now, you know Dalton and Devane and Mr. Holmes, they wasn't going to let none of that food get past them, so they had a little bite to eat before they sat down in the parlor. Well, old Bud just couldn't believe it. He just didn't rightly know about these fellers and the Presidential Corps. He took it all in with a grain of salt. These was right nice and good people, but it was a heck of a pill to swallow about them lizards and all them adventures. Now, Mr. Holmes got right to the point. We know all about you and your family, Bud. And he then began to tell all about all their lives. Old Bud was dumbfounded and flabbergasted, to say the least, gobsmacked. Mr. Holmes said, we have vetted you this fur, but if you want to know any more, you will have to take an oath. And this is till death, or we allow you to say more, and to who. If you are friends, it will be for life, like you was born into these here families. Well, Dalton spoke up and said, Bud, that we know all about your books and what you've been writing about, and what we are talking about here is life, for life. This has to do with the safety of your country and the world. Your head will be a-spinning for a spell, said Devane, and then all of our lives are at risk, just like yours will be. Well, we'll be leaving in the morning, Bud. Let us know your decision before then. By the way, we have your possibles. What? Said Bud, but they had all left on out by then. Well, Buster said to Bud, all us boys and kin has decided we would love for you to be on board, but if this is too much to cogitate on, then we will part friends, and you will be welcome from here on out, but not part of our adventures or families. But if you do, it will be one heck of a ride. Ride the rocket, Hired says. I just don't know what to say, says Bud. Never in my wildest dreams. That's just it. This is part of those dreams. I, for one, said Buster, surely hope y'all join us. Nuff said, said Jessie. Get out the old McBrayer. That night, Buster pulled Bud aside and told him he wanted him to know something. If you say yes, you cannot ever take that back now. You will be privy to secrets and truth you can never imagine. There probably will be some fighting and a killing and no telling what all, saving our country, the world, and our freedom. If you think it is too much, just walk away, but you can never write or talk about what we have discussed. Buster, do you reckon I can call home tonight? I won't be telling none of this, but I need to talk to my folks. Well, sure enough, here's my phone. It's a satellite phone encrypted for anywhere in the world and beyond. Have at it. Beyond? Well, the next day after Buster's folks left on out for the day, Bud sat down with all the boys. And Bud asked them all if they all wanted him in. We done voted, Bud. It was unanimous. Well, then I'm in. About that time, Mr. Holmes come in with Dalton and Devane. Mr. Holmes asked Bud what was his decision. I'm in, said Bud. Good. We're glad to have you aboard. You start today. You'll be staying a spell with Buster and then with the other boys. Good luck, Bud. You mean that's it? Yep, you're one of the few. Then they left on out. Well, Buster said, I'll give you the grand tour, so to speak. Then Hired will begin to teach you to fly every plane and his and gizmos we got, and we got a lot. Walter will begin to teach you weaponry and explosives, along with me, Buster. And Jesse is kind of a mastermind with inventions along with the rest of us, but mostly about law and especially money and making money. There will be more training with Dalton and Devane and other experts too. If you want to go home to pack up and visit with your folks a mite, we'll leave right away. Hired will give you your first lesson in the Queen. We will meet your folks and let them know you're safe and in good hands. Then, believe it or not, the sky's the limit. Walter, you going to teach him to hold the line? It's coming for sure. It's a-coming. You're going to ride the rocket, bud. I got faith in you from the first time I laid eyes on you. Now let's eat. Walter, what's that about your sister taking a shine to Bud? And Buster just let out a caterwauling at Hayden for the kitchen. I'm a-getting calf fries first, yelled Buster. What's calf fries, said Bud. Eat 'em and you'll love 'em, hollered Walter. Let's eat. Y'all have a blessed day.